And from me too. I think that as
Thanks,
well.
Nico.
Awesome. Let's see here. So we are live. People are starting to trickle in officially too. Welcome on in, everybody. Very, very excited to talk to you all today about de-risking your software implementation using Scribe. And today I have with us a premier expert here at Scribe, Caila MacDonald, our head of customer success. Caila, I'd love to let you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and I'd love to dive right into the story.
Sounds good. Yeah, we'll get going. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining today as we talk a little bit about how to de-risk your software implementations with Scribe. I see a few people trickling in. I'm going to hang on another 30 seconds here. Okay, I think we're pretty stable. So, thanks everyone for joining me today. My name is Caila MacDonald. I lead customer success here at Scribe. For the last 4 years, I've been helping enterprises document and scale how work gets done, key documentation for their business. But before that, I spent about a decade at Oracle NetSuite in professional services and customer success, helping implement ERP systems for some of the largest organizations in the country and globally, and some of the most complex implementations. And so I know firsthand just how critical documentation and tools like Scribe are for making that go smoothly. So we'll chat a little bit about that today. In my time at NetSuite and in delivering implementations, what that means is I spent a lot of time in rooms like this, making sure that implementations went smoothly. I spent a lot of time looking at clocks that looked like this. Any guesses? Anyone? Yeah. Any guesses on what this countdown is leading up to? Anyone else living and dying by the countdown clock right now? Yeah, counting down to go live. I spent a lot of evenings like this, trying to hit those deadlines. And truth be told, a lot of the time looked a bit like this. By the way, these images, no AI was used in the generation of these images. These are real experiences. And that's why if you're going through a rollout or maybe anticipating one, these might resonate with you. But here's the good news. It does not have to be like this. You do not have to experience some of the same pain and challenges that I have in the past. And that's what we'll share today, how Scribe can help with implementations, software implementations across all phases of the journey. So we'll chat a little bit about what those challenges are, some of the pain that you might be anticipating or feeling or recently felt. We'll take a look at each phase in the implementation journey, and we'll talk about how Scribe can be helpful to de-risk each of those phases individually. Actually, let me pull the audience. Would love to hear in the chat. Anyone here, are you considering a implementation? Are you implementing one of these tools that you see here, one of these categories, or have you recently gone through an implementation? Or maybe you're looking to implement something else that's not listed here. Feel free to drop it in the chat. I'd love to bring things to life. I see we've got a Salesforce implementation. I think many others might be in the same camp. HubSpot, absolutely. Awesome. ServiceNow. I threw in Entrada. Yep. Dynamics 365. These are very common business systems. Of course, you're all quite familiar with. These you're probably recognizing are the backbone of your business, driving day-to-day operations. It is incredibly critical that these systems are running and are implemented seamlessly to support your business and support your goals, to allow you to run without interruption. Now, the challenge here is that then the reality is these enterprise rollouts typically don't go smoothly. In fact, 70% of ERP implementations fail to meet their original business goals and support the original use cases for which they were selected or provisioned, which is wild. 70%. Just slightly fewer than that exceed their originally allocated budget. So the vast majority of implementations are failing to hit their goals, are exceeding their budget. And CRM is not too far behind. So you guys, Salesforce, HubSpot implementations, the picture is not much rosier. These are really challenging rollouts for a number of reasons. The way we approach them and have approached them historically is really fraught with a number of inefficiencies. First of all, think about how you define the requirements for these implementations. For many of us, this probably involves pulling your subject matter experts out of the business, maybe flying them around the world or around the country to sit in a conference room and define your current state, to define those business requirements. That's slowing down the business, that's interrupting the business happening, that's slowing down the rollout. It's a very time-consuming and costly stage. Throughout the project, you're often relying on static documentation, both of those requirements and the configuration of the system, the project as it's moving forward. Means you're getting into SIT and UAT and relying on that incomplete static documentation. Test cases don't reflect real workflows. Testers aren't able to complete testing effectively or efficiently. And that means you're uncovering process gaps and potential issues in the implementation late in testing, resulting in last-minute rework and potentially even delayed go-lives. Resetting that timer, that countdown clock. That's never something that we want to do. And that's even before we get to training end users, which ultimately the goal of rolling out a new system and the critical aspect is that folks are using it, that it is supporting the business and end users. So each of these risks, all of these pain points compound at every stage throughout the project. And so it's really no surprise to consider that the majority of projects don't actually accomplish those original goals and don't end up being completed on budget. You can imagine, right, the creep and this compounding risk is happening throughout each phase. So what we're going to do now is talk through each of these stages, and I'm so excited to share with you all how Scribe can help with these specific objectives and address these specific pain points, not just at the training stage, which is the majority of customers that come to Scribe. They come to support their training initiatives and documenting processes that they need for their rollout, but how Scribe can actually help in every single one of these stages. So first, considering the architect stage where you're designing the business system, you're capturing requirements, designing against that for your new system rollout. So this requires understanding that subject matter expert knowledge. How is the business running today? What are the business requirements? What does the system need to be able to accomplish for you? To do that, you're pulling people out of that daily work. You're documenting, you maybe don't have documentation for some of these requirements. So you're starting from scratch and creating that for your current state or trying your best to understand what those are. Meanwhile, well, they're likely changing through discussion. They're never fully static. So by getting Scribe in the hands of those subject matter experts at this very preliminary stage helps to reduce the reliance on workshops and real-time interviews to capture this information. You can empower your SMEs to directly capture these workflows while they're working with minimal or no interruption. That provides an immense amount of data and insight to design against. It helps to align all stakeholders on both the current state workflows, and it helps enable a much more accurate future state design. And it serves to create this source of truth, which can live and breathe throughout the project here from the beginning. Going into the configuration stage, there's a new set of challenges that teams often face. There's natural drift in requirements as you get into the system. There's config decisions that are made by often siloed teams, whether it's a vendor or a third-party technical team or internal technical team, developers who are working to configure or customize the system. They're making decisions that have potential downstream impacts that aren't well understood by other teams and it's hard to vet these because they're not well documented. It's incredibly cumbersome to communicate at the level of detail that's necessary, what these decisions are, how the system is being configured, and how to ensure that you don't end up with gaps or overlaps later in the process. So having Scribe at this stage allows these teams to keep documentation current as the config is evolving, and ensure that every team is working from the latest version. Again, Scribe can seamlessly capture that level of detail that's necessary to communicate those key configurations across different teams and to business stakeholders to keep them in the loop. So it ensures that everybody is aligned and these decisions can be validated as quickly as possible. These also serve as a great resource as a checkpoint before going into testing and can be repurposed in testing as well.
Quick question for you, Caila, on that last stage too. So I know a lot of times people would have a lot of changes made to the documentation during config. How would they keep that up to date using Scribe specifically?
Yeah, so because Scribe can just capture as someone works or as someone goes through the exact process, an existing document could easily be up-versioned or could be edited or components of it could be modified simply by performing those exact steps or walking through that configuration in real time, including a voiceover that can be provided through voice transcription. That would be my recommendation.
Awesome. And if somebody was actually planning to get those current states captured from their subject matter experts and they were thinking about maybe doing a workshop or something else like that too, how would they do that using Scribe instead?
Yeah, absolutely. So, quite simply, put Scribe in the hands of your subject matter experts, those folks in the field who you'd be calling in to do these interviews to explain how work is happening, and simply have them use it. It's as simple as having them turn it on to capture these key workflows in the period leading up to your configuration or your architect stage. So that's the way you can work on it today, just again by getting it into the hands of these folks or even delegates on their teams. Um, I would be remiss in not mentioning that Scribe additionally has the capability through our optimized product to passively capture that data. So to passively capture the data about workflows that's being done by a number of folks within a given team or across multiple teams and aggregate it and present those insights to you without requiring those SMEs to, again, even have the two-click requirement of turning on Scribe to capture their workflows. If that's of interest, we would absolutely recommend having a conversation with our team about how we can support that, and we can show you a little bit more about how that can work.
Awesome. Thank you very much for covering that too. I just one more question too before we move on. I know a lot of folks oftentimes are working with an SI systems integrator on an ERP rollout. Can they use Scribe if they're working with somebody externally, a third party consultant perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. And in most complex implementations, as in my time, often working with third parties, with system integrators, large firms that are bringing this expertise to bear, whether it's in selection, in architecture configuration, and beyond. Absolutely. And we would still recommend it. We can talk through more specific details about access and licensing, kind of between your SI and yourself. But the short answer is yes, please. You'll both be so happy for doing it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Amazing. So moving on to testing. Testing, in my experience, is where the majority of implementations can go off the rails in terms of slipping timelines and slipping budgets. this is usually a very resource and time-intensive period of the project. And it's stymied by a number of things, but predominantly the fact that test cases don't reflect actual end user needs. Creating accurate test cases is incredibly time-consuming and not often budgeted. It's a critical path item following configuration, and it's not always done. In fact, the majority of test cases fail during a testing phase. The majority of test cases fail not because of an issue with configuration or with the solution, but because the tests are not able to be executed accurately according to the designer, according to the process and the intent. Testers don't have the knowledge they need to execute them in a new system. Again, particularly if you're bringing in testing resources that haven't previously been involved in the project, you're augmenting bandwidth to support typically widespread testing, and that's a big challenge. So by leveraging Scribe, again, Scribe content that you may have created in the previous phases that we just mentioned, or leveraging to specifically create test cases here, helps standardize testing and standardize the UAT phase by providing those clear step-by-step workflows to testers so they can execute accurate and consistent testing. Moreover, providing testers with Scribe access to be able to document the steps they're completing and to be able to use that level of step-by-step detail to report their results, have that supporting documentation for both past and failed tests, helps lead to faster resolution of any bugs or any issues. So these are two things that are often overlooked by customers that me and my team work with. And I think this is such a huge area where Scribe can be incredibly helpful. So I encourage you all to think about how Scribe can really assist with testing, whether you're in implementation, about to start implementation.
I love that you touched on that too. Thank you very much. One of the questions too that we've had from an audience member who couldn't make it is they let me know one of the biggest challenges we have is that our testers don't have a good way to document their testing experience or any bugs that are surfaced. Can you explain how Scribe would help with that? And you sort of touched on that too, but I'm curious if you have any specific recommendations on formatting or really anything else to help out that process.
Yeah, absolutely. So in traditional tools you might have available today, you might be having testers like create a screenshot, capture a screenshot, copy paste into a Word document, type out their results, or maybe they're capturing a video. But both are time consuming for the tester and time consuming for a developer to scrub through a video and find specific areas. So my recommendation is simply to have them use Scribe to capture their workflow. I'm always a fan of voice transcription to be able to add more context, to be able to add more detail. So I'd recommend that. Just having testers complete each test with Scribe running to capture that Scribe and simply link those test results wherever you're tracking testing can be incredibly, incredibly useful for developers who are resolving something or for your repository of test results.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so training. This is where folks are typically thinking about incorporating step-by-step guides into training material that's necessary to enable end users to leverage the platform once it goes live. Now, there are several challenges with training in general in terms of how it fits into software implementation. The first is that one-time training sessions typically don't stick. Usually there's a combination of training resources that are necessary and leave-behinds, job aids. Having a reference material that includes step-by-step details for teams that are using the new system to execute their day-to-day once they're outside of the classroom is critical. We know this from end users. Another challenge that comes up in training in terms of your project team and thinking about your rollout is that effective training and detailed guides require your system to be locked, your config to be locked. That means you have to have completed config and UAT and incorporated any of those changes. So this critical path item typically can't be completed until that's done. And it's creating a lag now between when you're able to complete those steps and when you're able to go live. Whereas with using Scribe, first of all, it's the fastest and easiest way to create these step-by-step training materials that your end users will be able to reference not only in supported training sessions, whether you choose to deliver those live in classroom settings, what have you, but also as that leave behind that they can reference, that self-serve training documentation that we know increases adoption and helps end users transact in the system more confidently. You also can reuse, again, all the documentation that you've been creating throughout the process. Incorporating any of those tweaks is much simpler and much faster than having to recreate training material from scratch post-testing.
This is fantastic. Thank you. I've got, of course, some more questions here for you too from the audience. One of them is, one thing we've been discussing, our training materials need to add a lot of context to the steps, and we're worried that Scribe cannot handle that amount of context. Do you have any recommendations or parts of the product that can help that we're not aware of? You sort of touched on it with voice transcription a little bit, but I'm curious if you have any other pieces of advice for them too.
Yeah, so voice transcription, number one, I just think it's the easiest way to capture that context around each step and provide whatever nuances are necessary for somebody executing the process to know. But the second piece I would recommend are Scribe pages. If you are not familiar with Scribe pages, let's think about Scribe as being a recipe, the step-by-step instructions. A page is like a cookbook. A page is a great format to be able to include additional context, whether it's images, whether it's text, whether it's a video that you want to embed there with a voiceover. You can incorporate all of that in a page alongside scribes of your specific step-by-steps.
Fantastic. I love a page too. Very happy to see a page shout out here on this workshop today. Another question too. I know a lot of times we have global teams on the call too. If somebody does have a global team and they have to, take a lot of time to translate this documentation that they're actually making, what would you say Scribe can help with that? Like, is there a specific feature or something too that you would call out for this to make it more accessible for the whole team?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for calling that out, Nico. That can be a huge time-consuming process of training and creating training materials for any project, but specifically for a system rollout, is making sure that they're suitable for your global audience, where your core configuration is the same, but you might need to deliver it in local language. So lucky for everyone here, Scribe does include language translation capabilities. You can automatically translate scribes to a number of very common languages directly in the platform. And there are also mechanisms within pages to translate them to different languages as well. So that can avoid the need to create multiple different versions for the same process. Instead, you can publish a single version and make it accessible to your global audiences.
Fantastic. I love that. Always love to see the global translation mentioned too. And last question here on the training slide too. Somebody had mentioned it's a requirement that our training materials are delivered via our LMS. What is the best way to share our scribes that way?
Yeah, this is not uncommon. And in fact, it's great. Having LMS and having a repository to support your training is very key. Most LMSs support embedded content, and Scribe content is able to be embedded in those systems or in those learning modules. So absolutely something that our team would be happy to help with. If you wanted to share more information about your specific LMS, we can take a look and confirm that embeds would be supported and give some recommendations.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're so welcome. All right, we'll keep going through a couple more phases here. So all of this is leading up to go live, of course, the launch of your system, which can still be a very challenging period where support is likely to get overwhelmed with questions as they're coming in. And users are struggling when they can't find answers to what they need. And all of this is going to have a negative impact on adoption when users hit roadblocks. Not to mention, again, the interruptions to your business. If there's a hard cut over here, users simply need to know how to execute these business critical functions, and getting blocked is simply not an option. So incorporating Scribe and having Scribe content available provides you step-by-step guidance to employees that they can access, again, not just in the context of a live training or of a training module, but at any time through the Scribe extension and through links that you can publish for them. This enables them to self-serve answers to questions. We've also seen more generally that enabling Scribe content has a huge positive impact on deflecting support cases in general, both in times of go live and in steady state. So this helps remove some of the burden from your support team who's handling some of these cases at this time, and ensures that employees have the guidance and the confidence to execute what they need to.
Fantastic. Thank you, Caila. We do have a question from the audience from Atria. They mentioned, we are a Microsoft shop with content housed in SharePoint. What are your recommended best practices that don't involve losing the Scribe advantages, but enable the scribes to be part of the holistic content and search ecosystem?
That is a really great question. Thank you for raising that. So there's two recommendations that I would make, particularly if SharePoint is kind of your go-to spot, where that's where folks are used to finding knowledge, searching for knowledge, and engaging with it. Embedding Scribe content is 100% my recommendation. That creates a seamless experience in SharePoint, but also ensures you're getting the best of Scribe native formats. That means you're tracking insights, you're understanding engagement with the content. You're also able to up version and publish any changes really seamlessly. The second thing that I would recommend is our API integrations facilitate a very, very nice integration with Copilot, if that's something you're exploring, where you can kind of leverage SharePoint knowledge and Scribe knowledge side by side in a single Copilot agent that's able to incorporate that knowledge, serve it to end users in extremely customizable ways. If you're a Microsoft shop, you've probably got some folks that might be exploring that already. I know it's very popular. So something we'd absolutely be happy to chat a little bit more about, share some examples or proof of concept, what that could look like.
Fantastic. Another question here on the Go Live slide. We love using the Guide Me feature for our small team, but can't afford to license our entire org with Guide Me. Are there other options that we're not considering?
I'm racking my brain for a workaround or for other solutions, but truly Guide Me is so powerful, and Scribe's licensing model is really designed to help give every end user the access that they need in Sidekick, alongside and transposed on their screen via Guide Me. Scribe native formats, everything we've been talking about here, support that, and I would strongly recommend it. So again, I would recommend maybe having a further conversation with our team about what that could look like to help bring these benefits to all of your end users.
Sure. And would this be a case for viewer roles as well too on the enterprise plans?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Fantastic. And a final question here too on the Go Live. How can we help arm our internal support teams to help with the number of questions that come from employees during the Go Live process?
Yes. Give them Scribe. Support teams that have access to Scribe, L1, L2, L3 support teams that have access to Scribe to help create content to answer questions get significantly better ratings and significantly faster resolution times. This is what our surveys have shown for teams that are using Scribe in this way, because they're able to very quickly provide detailed and specific instructions to end users that they're often able to increase like first solve rates and decrease first response times very significantly.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, let's continue to the final phase that we want to touch on today, which is post go live. as we all know, steady state is never completely steady. So driving adoption after go live of a new system and really proving ROI of this new system is quite challenging. You don't necessarily have visibility into how the system is being used after it's been rolled out. That includes visibility into variations that might exist across different teams in different regions. Employees are developing workarounds. And again, without this visibility, you simply can't prove the success of the initiative or define the ROI. And this is where Scribe, particularly Scribe Optimize, can be incredibly helpful here. So, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I previewed that Scribe Optimize is a product that allows you to passively capture data about workflows being executed across systems and understand the potential inefficiencies or the potential optimizations that exist in these workflows. This visibility shows you how the system is actually being used, how you can improve the configuration of the system. Those are some of the optimizations that can be proposed. Just give you that visibility that you need to improve adoption or to align workflows to the desired state. So I've explained how Scribe can be helpful at each of these stages. We've helped hundreds of customers leverage Scribe to streamline rollouts. But I'd love for you to hear from DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean is a very fast growing AI company that recently faced a very ambitious 9-month deadline to roll out Workday. And to meet the timeline, the people team turned to Scribe to create step-by-step guides to assist with the rollout. What they reported was a 90% reduction in the documentation time compared to what they had budgeted for this stage. And given the state of the project, that allowed them to complete the implementation 100% on time, which, as we saw earlier in this and as we discussed, is extremely rare in software rollouts for them to be completed on time and meeting all of these requirements, being able to support these use cases.
I love that so much. If you had to guess what percentage of rollouts actually do finish on time in your experience?
What percentage finish on time? So the stat earlier was, I think, about 64% that exceed budget. I would say it's actually higher for timelines. They go hand in hand, but I'd say it's probably higher for timelines. And the biggest timeline creep is typically during that testing stage, in my experience.
Okay, good to know.
Cool. So to recap here, Scribe has an opportunity to help you from pre to post go live across all of the stages that we just reviewed to maintain those goals of being on time and on budget, to make sure you have fewer surprises at go live, and provide this better visibility and ultimately help you to achieve the ROI that you're looking for on the large investment that you're making in a software implementation. So thank you everyone for joining today, for your questions, for your participation. I hope this was incredibly helpful in learning how Scribe can plug in, again, not just to a training stage, but to any of the phases of these implementation projects. So I'm happy to open the floor up for questions. We can get into any more specific questions. And I think everybody should see like a clickable banner on your screen. If you have more questions on anything, any of the features or functionality that we've talked about today, or any of the solutions that I've mentioned, feel free to click on that, and that will allow you to schedule some time directly with a member of our team to talk about that in more detail.
Perfect. And we've got the it reminds me of like the New York Stock Exchange ticker. So we've got that live now. So if anybody is curious, you're welcome to click on that too. But I do have another question from an audience member. They had mentioned they were actually a part of our Scribe Optimize launch event. They were curious about it because they had heard a little bit more about it from another member of their team. Can you explain how the two actually work together? They're currently on an enterprise plan.
Yeah, absolutely. So Scribe Capture is probably what you're most familiar with. Scribe Capture is the ability to seamlessly create those step-by-step guides just by following along and capturing your screen in a way that you can publish that documentation to end users and any of the use cases I talked about. Scribe Optimize allows the same kind of, I'll say under the covers, the same kind of machinery allows your business, your organization to passively capture workflows that are happening at a much broader scale. So without requiring users to opt in or even have maybe that little bit of cognitive overhead of thinking about creating documentation, Scribe is simply doing that for you. It's capturing the data, it's aggregating and anonymizing the data, and it's being able to package it into workflow specific insights across all of your major workflows and tasks that it's observing. So this is incredibly helpful, like I mentioned, in earlier stages in the project, right? You can imagine skipping some of those interviews, very lengthy, very time consuming, like over the shoulder shadowing sessions to understand current behavior or current workflows. And likewise, it's incredibly helpful post go live in order to capture work that's being done in the new system to identify those gaps and to really support your continuous improvement.
Fantastic. Another question here too. Can Scribe just help with the implementation of new software? What about updating existing software? For context, they're rolling out a new Workday module later this year. They're curious how they should think about Scribe as a part of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It can help. I've been talking about software implementations, but rolling out a new module or upgrading existing software, all of these same principles apply. All of these same benefits from using Scribe apply. So I'd absolutely consider using it in each of these.
Fantastic, fantastic. And of course, too, we'll be here for any other questions too, but there is a little survey about webinar feedback too. So we'll be launching that towards the end. We've got another question here. It looks like, is there any software that Scribe cannot work with? I'm curious if there's any limitations there that you've seen.
Um, by default, no. Anything on your screen, anything that you can see, Scribe can see is the general rule of thumb. I will say there are some nuances due to some specific setups. So if you have questions about a particular platform or a particular experience you're having, please flag it for our team.
Fantastic. I love that. That's a great rule of thumb. If you can see it, Scribe can see it. If it's on your computer, there's a good chance you can reach it with Scribe.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. That is great. I really appreciate everybody for joining us today. It was great to see how many dark mode versus light mode enjoyers there were in the chat. So thank you all very, very much. If you have any further questions, you can feel free to reach out to us here, book some time with our team. But you can always also find us on all social channels. If you've got any further questions for Caila, we'll be sure to get those surfaced and answered for you too. But thank you very much, Caila, for all of your expertise, for everything that you did today too. This was incredibly helpful. So thank you so much. And of course, the recording will be sent out to everybody who has registered too. So if you didn't catch one part of it too, you can rewatch it at any point in time. Well, thank you very much. If there's any final words too that you'd like to leave us off with, Caila, please feel free to do so. But other than that, we can leave the stage here soon and then we'll be all set.
Oh, thanks so much, Nico, and thanks everyone for joining. And I just want to say good luck to everyone with your implementations. I hope you're in touch, and I hope we can help you make it such a rewarding experience and such a valuable project for you and your organization.
And it would be a valuable project if you got the chance to meet and work with Caila too. So that's an extra added bonus there for anybody who is chatting in today. Well, thank you all very, very much, Prioni, Daryl, Ezekiel, Liza. It was great to see you all, and Krista too. Vetis, great. Thank you very much for joining. And yeah, we'll send it out as soon as we're finished up here too. But for now, Caila and I will leave the stage. I'll pop up the survey too if anybody's interested in giving some feedback for us right now. But thank you all again, and have a wonderful rest of your day today. Take care.
Thanks, Ellen.